9, 8.
You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Where have all the good ones gone? Where are all the gods? Where's the streetwise Hercules to fight the rising odds? Is there a white knight upon a fiery steed? Late at night I toss and turn and dream of what I need. Yeah, that was for Kyle. Today we're talking about where have Marvel's all the good directors Marvel used to have gone. And they used to have really good ones, didn't they? Stick around for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey, look, we have a new opening. JD must have finished that up. Very cool. Hello, Ed. Good to see you. Missed you on Sunday. Hope you had a good birthday there. Today, like I said, we're going to talk about Marvel. They're having a lot of problems locking in directors, getting good directors. And we're going to take a look kind of at the history of Marvel and the directors and stuff. But before that, let's get into the news. All right. Let's see. Kicking off with the news today. There's a lot of negativity going around for the planned Blade reboot. And we're going to talk about directors right away. Even the original Blade actor, Wesley Snipes, has been taking shots saying, Blade, lordy, lordy, lordy. Folks still looking for the secret sauce. Riding some snowmobiles in traffic, kind of rough. Daywalkers make it look easy, don't they? Okay, that's supposed to be a rip. I'm not sure I don't speak Wesley Snipes. But the one person who still is talking up the project is Maya Goth, who just was at the premiere for Maxine, the new horror movie she's in. She's been scheduled to be part of the movie for some while now, and believes that things are still going to happen. Good things are still going to happen for those waiting. The film is still scheduled for November 7th, 2025. And she has said that that to her, it's very clear that the people behind the movie really care, saying they do. They want to make a great movie. That's the sense that I get from them, and that feels good. Now, Goth is supposed to be playing Lilith in Blade, a character who is also known as, as a key supernatural villain in the Marvel Universe. Lilith tries to take the blood from Blade's daughter. Eric Pearson, who used to work on Agent Carter, Thor Ragnarok, Black Widow, he's writing the script while the film still searching for another director. Staying in the Marvel Universe, Tatiana Maslany was a guest on the Superhero Comic Con. It was a guest at Superhero Comic Con in San Antonio last weekend, and said that she doesn't think that she's going to be coming. She said this previously too, but she doesn't think there'll be a second season, saying, I don't think so. I think we blew our budget. And Disney was like, no, thanks. But she looks back fondly on the series, especially one specific moment, the Megan Thee Stallion episode where she was twerking with her. She says, I have been to multiple Megan Thee Stallion concerts before this. I was ready. That was the greatest moment of my life. And while we may not get a second season, it doesn't mean that She-Hulk won't appear again in the MCU. I'm thinking she probably will. Now, this, of course, leads to the question of what exactly is Jennifer and Matt Murdock's relationship, being that Daredevil guest starred in her series and stuff. She says, I think Jennifer is keeping her options open, but I'm pretty sure she'd hit that again. So, all right, moving over to Guy Ritchie Guy Ritchie, of course, did the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. He's currently developing a young Sherlock series that it's interesting that they've cast the parents of Sherlock. Sherlock's dad, Silas, will be played by Joseph Fiennes, and Natasha McElhone will be Sherlock's mother, Cordelia. Now, this is kind of interesting because Fiennes is the uncle of Hero Fiennes Tiffin, who has been cast to play young Sherlock. So he's playing with his uncle as his father. It's kind of cool. Now, Silas is a scientist, explorer, and a self-made businessman, while his mother is just a devoted mother, artist, matriarch. Inspired by Andy Lane's critically acclaimed book series, the show follows a 19-year-old, now disgraced, raw, unfiltered, unformed genius when he finds himself caught up in a murder mystery at Oxford University that threatens his freedom during diving into his first ever case with a wild lack of discipline. Sherlock manages to unravel a globe-trotting conspiracy that will change his life forever. Now, Ritchie is going to be directing and executive producing, and it's going to be an 8-episode series. Moving over to the DCU, Lanterns has been given a green light and official series order, and will actually be on HBO rather than just Max. The redeveloped adaptation of Green Lantern will be coming from Chris Mundy, Damon Lindelof, and Tom King. It is part of a new strategy for Warner Brothers that will move some of the more expensive series that they have planned from just being on the streaming service to also appearing on the linear network. I guess that's what they call HBO now. This also includes the new Harry Potter series and the It prequel series, Welcome to Derry. Now, obviously, all of these shows will be subsequently air on Max later, but Lanterns follows the new recruit Jon Stewart and Lantern legend Hal Jordan, two intergalactic cops drawn into a dark and Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. The 8-part series comes from Warner Brothers and DC Studios. Mundy will serve as the showrunner, and Lindelof and King will co-write the series with all 3 executive producing. It is interesting that they want to do an Earth-based series. That just seems like a cost efficiency thing because, Green Lanterns, you want them in space. So it's kind of weird that we're going to go, okay, no, we're going to do it on Earth. Moving back to Marvel-ish. Following the snowplow accident in January 23, Jeremy Renner says that he just doesn't have the energy for challenging roles and is amid his continuing recovery. He said, I just don't have the energy for it. I don't have the fuel. I have so much fuel to put into this reality, this body, all this stuff. I can't just go play make-believe right now because this takes a lot of time to get right every day just so I can have a positive thought, so I can progress, so I can keep growing. Now, he's returned to the mayor of Kingstown, but he said it was kind of terrifying to do that. He says, because I'm to do like fiction, I'm still trying to live in reality. I'm trying to live. So it was hard for me to a line to cross. It was a big stretch. It was very, very challenging for me mentally to get over that hump. I still struggle with it sometimes. Like, I don't take it super seriously. I'm in the character that I can do very well, and I know the show very well. So it was easier for me kind of to slide back into it. But if it was a very challenging role, I couldn't have taken it up. Not challenging in the sense that, because the show is challenging, but if I had to do something like play Jeffrey Dahmer or something very far from me, it would take too much out of me. Now, this is not saying he's not taking roles. He's already been cast in the next Knives Out saga, Wake Up Dead Man, with Daniel Craig. So, yeah, he's not done with acting. He's just kind of taken the easier stuff. Kyle says, rumor is a lot of the mayor of Kingstown stuff was sitting down shots and one take stand-ups. Makes sense.
The people I know who are involved talk about how it's like shooting the late Godfather movies with Brando, where he couldn't stand like he used to. So they do a lot of sitting at a table and just kind of standing up sort of stuff.
Makes sense. So, oh, hey, Kenneth, I didn't see you come in. Good to see you. Ed says, were you on Sunday? I looked for you, but I couldn't find you. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Yes, we were on Sunday. We went a little long even. So, but we were talking about The Acolyte, which, by the way, has gotten so much better in the last 2 episodes. So, all right, sticking with Marvel, Kevin Feige gave an update on the Fantastic Four, confirming that the film will be set in the 60s, and it will take place on an alternate Earth, and they're going to begin filming sooner than expected. People were talking about December, January. They're going to start filming the day after Comic-Con. So what he said was, we start shooting at the end of July. He was on the new official Marvel podcast that Marvel's trying to do on their own. I listened to it. It's a hype thing, but it was nice to see Feige on there. He talked about that. He talked about Wonder Man. But the main thing was he did confirm the retro Fantastic Four thing. He said, yes, it's very much so a period piece. There were a lot of smart people who noticed that the cityscape didn't look exactly like the New York that we know or that existed in the 60s in our world. Those are some smart observations, I'll say. He also commented on Marvel's classic family joining the MCU. Says, I'm extremely excited by it because I think those characters are mainstays, are legendary pillars of the Marvel Universe that we've never gotten to play with or explore in a significant way outside of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and a few fun teases before, in the way that we're doing in this film. So I'm extremely excited for that. Crazy Amazing J-Man. Hello, J-Man. Good to see you. Letitia Wright is teasing a possible return to the Marvel Universe to reprise her role as Shuri from the Black Panther. The Marvel star made an appearance on The View to promote her latest movie, Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot. I know nothing about that one, I have to admit. And she was inevitably asked about the future in the MCU. The hostess, Sunny Hostin, said there are some new Avenger movies on the horizon. Everyone wants to know if Shuri will be making another appearance in the Marvel Universe. Now, Wright very carefully chose her words, saying, let's just say, I would like to continue as Shuri. She's one of my favorite characters. Such a blessing, honestly. I kid you not. I'm so grateful to her. But when asked about a third Black Panther installment, she said, there's a lot coming up. So, good possibility we're still getting stuff with that. And then following last year's real sleepy San Diego Con, and that was mainly due to the actors' strikes. They couldn't get anybody down there, stuff like that. They've confirmed that Marvel will be returning to Hall H, and the sources are saying that they've got some big things announced. Now, we expected them to hold off and do all this at D23, but it sounds like they're going to do a pretty big presentation at San Diego Con. And maybe this is kind of their way of getting things back on track, getting the comic book fan base back. You know, I mean, when you focus on D23, you're getting a lot of Disney fans, where if you do Comic Con, you're focusing on comic fans. And that is kind of the bread and butter for Marvel. Now, Comic Con runs July 25th to 28th and this is the same weekend that you're going to have the first R-rated Disney Marvel movie, Deadpool and Wolverine. That's expected to be huge, by the way. They're actually saying that tracking is putting it about a $200 million start. So, yeah, definitely a good time to be at Comic-Con if you're Marvel. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will talk about Marvel's director history and why they seem to be having a problem getting in some good ones. So we'll be right back.
Ask your local comic shop to add Battle Quest comics to your pull list today. To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds, a promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
We know you probably get a lot of emails, but could you please make sure to sign up for our mailing list? We don't send a lot of emails, and we try not to bother you. We just want to give you the best information about all the cool stuff that's going on around here. Sign up on our website, theexplive.com.
I'm not used to the sound on the music being quite so muted. It used to be really, and now it's like, gonna have to get used to that.
Blame JD, he's old.
I'm probably older than JD.
Chronologically, yes. Psychologically, no.
Okay. All right, guys. So let me tell you how this topic came up. I came across a post or something about a Jack Kirby documentary called Kirby at War. And I was sitting there and I was crocheting, and I like to put on a documentary or something that I can listen to while I work. And the problem was that particular documentary is partly narrated by a French gentleman who only speaks French. So it's subtitled. And if I'm down here looking at my work, I'm totally missing the subtitles. So I decided I'm going to save that for another time. But I looked down and it said, Icons Unearthed Marvel. And I thought, I don't know what that is. So I clicked on it. And it turns out it's an 8-part series on Amazon Prime or Prime Video, however you refer to it. And I guess they've done other things like Lord of the Rings and James Bond and Batman. But this 8-part season focused on Marvel. And it's kind of like that 2 big book set, The History of Marvel Studios, where it goes behind the scenes of making the first phase of Marvel and all the steps and stuff. And it's pretty interesting because it really breaks down the different parts. I mean, really, the entire first episode is about the history of Marvel as a filmmaker, or from them, their desire to get into animation and the movies and stuff. And it goes into the 70s stuff and the Hulk TV series and the animation shows on Fox and all of those things. And it's pretty detailed. Then it goes into starting Marvel Studios, the risks of taking on using Iron Man as their big thing, what happened to all the bankruptcy and selling off all the rights to their bigger named characters, all of that stuff. And then it breaks down basically by the individual movies. Sorry, I got something in my eye. So it focuses on Iron Man 1, and then it focuses on the Hulk, and it focuses on Iron Man 2 and Thor. And one of my favorite quotes from it had to be when talking about Thor. And it's the writers are talking about how Kenneth Branagh came in one day and said, Kara, yeah. Ed just pointed out that he's going to miss not seeing Kara. Kara's AZ Power Girl, Kara Nicole. It was one of the on the old opening. But he said Kenneth Branagh walked in and said, Mjolnir is a really, but he did it in an English accent. Mjolnir is a really tough word to say. Do you think we could change it without the fans coming after us with pitchforks and torches? And the writers are like, no, we can't. He goes, oh, Mjolnir it is. And he left. And I just like that idea that he was like, I would like to change it, but would fans react badly? Yes, they would. Okay, let's move on. So anyway, so that had me thinking about the directors of phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and all of this stuff about having a hard time finding directors for, they're going to be on the third director for Blade. They're going to be on their second director for Avengers 5, whatever they're going to end up calling that. Fantastic Four went through another director before Matt Shackman signed on. So yeah, it's I think Ed says rename it Herbie. I think they solved it by having Darcy call it Meow Meow, which I thought was a perfect thing. But all right, so let's take a look at they did really well in the first 3 phases overall getting directors. It wasn't perfect, but the first phase, what they did was they looked at people who may not necessarily be what you would think of for a superhero movie, but who had experience in filmmaking. They started off with, the very first film they gave to the Swingers guy. That's how everybody was referring to Jon Favreau, as the Swingers guy, but he didn't direct Swingers. He wrote it and starred in it. He did start directing, but the things he directed, he made the movie Made, which he wrote. He made Elf, and he made Zathura, a space adventure, which was kind of a spin-off of Jumanji. So he had those things in the bag before Marvel ever approached him to make Iron Man. So I don't look at him as being a complete noob at that point. He had done some big films. And you look at the people that he had worked with. James Caan was in Elf. Will Ferrell, he had already worked with Vince Vaughn a bunch. So there were people that Marvel could go to and go, well, what do you think of this guy as a director? And they could get some honest answers. So, I don't think he was as a big a risk, but all of Iron Man was a risk. They took a chance on Robert Downey Jr., who had barely started a comeback after all his legal issues. He had done Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and that was it. That was the first thing he had done since all of his legal problems, and they had to really push to get him, the Favreau had to really push to get the studio to accept Robert Downey Jr. And it worked. Could you think of anybody else you'd want to see as Iron Man? You know, I mean, sure, they were throwing names out before, but Robert Downey Jr. was perfect. And the film was about as good as it could be. I mean, seriously, Iron Man set the bar for all of Marvel. It had the humor, it had the action, it had, you know, was able to do the origin story, but in a way that didn't bore the hell out of people. You know, we got to see, you know, all of the big stuff up front, action up front. You know, we start with the Humvee scene and the explosions, and it's like, okay, we're invested. Oh, what happened? And then we got some backstory. It was a really well put together movie, and it's one of the most, and it was the start for what is now the biggest franchise in film history. I mean, I don't think there's anything comparable to the Marvel Universe. Well, at the same time, Bill Skarsgård for the new Tony Stark. And since I still remember when they announced RDJ as Iron Man, everyone was like, he's a drunken, womanizing pig. And I was like, yes, that's Tony Stark. That's the perfect answer. So, yeah, that was perfect. Okay, so at the same time, because they were kind of hedging their bets, and they went ahead and started production on the Hulk. And I mean, as they're doing this, they're even talking about the Avengers and Thor and Captain America. So basically, Kevin Feige walked out, put the brass ones up on the table and said, yes, we're making this happen. Now, when they went to the Hulk, the guy they picked to direct the Hulk was even less of a risk than Favreau. This is Louis Leterrier, who had directed both Transporter and the sequel, and the movie Unleashed, which starred Jet Li and Bob Hoskins and was written by Luc Besson. So this was a guy that knew action. And that was the big thing Marvel was worried about going into the Hulk, is that everybody looked at the Ang Lee movie and said, well, that's a nice little psychological thriller, but where's the action? Where's the Hulk smash? Marvel wanted Hulk smash. Now, the problem was that Leterrier and the actor that was forced upon him, Ed Norton, wanted to do a more psychological thriller. So that's why the first half of the Hulk movie feels so different than the second half, because Marvel came in and Kevin Feige and ramped up the action in the second half. So you can see where that point happens, where it's more Ed Norton, and suddenly it's more Hulk. But originally, Leterrier wanted Mark Ruffalo. And the studio's the one that went, no, we're going with Ed Norton. He's a bigger name. But, you know, Norton and Leterrier wanted to do more. I mean, you remember the scene where we first see the Hulk. We don't see the Hulk. We see him in shadows. We see him throwing around machinery inside the bottling company plant. That's a very different movie than the completely well-lit fight with the army that we get at the college, or the showdown in Harlem. Now, which part was better? I think I'll let you guys decide that. Should Marvel have let Leterrier do what he wanted? Or should Leterrier listen more to Marvel? I don't know. You can come up with an answer. But the movie did well enough that they kept going, but it's still not one of the most beloved Marvel movies. Yeah, don't make me hungry. You won't like me when I'm hungry. There was so much love in that movie for the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno series that will always hold a special place in my heart. The fact that they spent so much time just bear hugging that movie, you know. Now, from there, they were supposed to go on to Thor, but what happened was, because Hulk didn't do as well as Iron Man, they got nervous. And they went, okay, let's speed up the Hulk, Iron Man 2. and they pushed Iron Man 2 up and were trying to take more control over it. And this, of course, had them start butting heads with Jon Favreau. So had it given the time that they wanted and allowed Favreau to do what he did, I think Iron Man 2 may have been a better movie. But still, they got nervous and pushed it out. But in doing so, they gave, Thor a little more time to breathe. But that's where I think it really works for them, because Thor could have been an absolute bomb. You have basically Shakespeare in capes and tights. You have, Shakespeare's usually in capes and tights. You have a superhero Shakespeare thing. You have this Shakespearean story of two brothers' rivalry for the love of their father, the story of learning humility. I mean, it really was a Shakespeare drama. So Marvel was brilliant in going out and getting Kenneth Branagh, because not only had he done a ton of Shakespeare adaptations at that point, but he had done the murder mystery Dead Again. He'd done the big budget Frankenstein movie that had Robert De Niro in it. He had done the movie, a remake of the classic movie Sleuth that had Michael Caine and Jude Law. So, I mean, he had better chops, and he was probably one of the most experienced, I won't say the most, but he was one of the most experienced directors they've ever worked with. And Branagh came in and made the dialogue work, which was a big worry for Marvel. He also was in a TV series called Wallander, where he had a co-star, a young actor named Tom Hiddleston, who then he brought in to audition. And while he didn't get the part of Thor, he did get the part of Loki. And that kind of set the tone for villains in the MCU. What Branagh gave us, I mean, there's a lot of Thor movies since. And I know Ragnarok is a well-loved movie, but for me, the first Thor movie is the most Thor of Thor movies. It is Jack Kirby and Walter Simonson's Thor brought to life. And while there aren't many reports of issues between there, Branagh never returned. Favreau didn't return after Iron Man 2. Louis Leterrier didn't return. But they got good work out of these three guys. Ed says, without Branagh, it would have been unwatchable. It was stellar to begin with, but he gave it gravitas. Exactly. Ed says, his Much Ado About Nothing is a brilliant adaptation that made me like Shakespeare for the first time ever. His Hamlet is just so brilliant. With Derek Jacobi as Claudius, and you got Billy Crystal and Robin Williams, and it is just and he has worked so much with Derek Jacobi over the years. It's kind of like how James Gunn brings in his guys. Kenneth Branagh's guy is Derek Jacobi. He brought him in on Dead Again. He brought him in on Murder on the Orient Express. He didn't bring him in on Thor, which shows you just how serious he was about it, that he didn't bring in one of his go-to guys. Now, Tenet did a great job, but I'm going to stick with Kenneth Branagh's. Now, the next movie up was the other one they were very worried about, because it was a period piece. It was a 1940s war story. And again, they got the perfect director. How do you do a 1940s or a period piece war story about a superhero? Well, you go to the guy who'd already done it. Joe Johnston, the guy that directed The Rocketeer. But he'd also directed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Jumanji, Jurassic Park 3, Hidalgo, and The Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins and Benicio del Toro. He also designed the Millennium Falcon. He used to be with ILM before all of that. I can't think of a better director to do Captain America at that point. And he took what was basically this hokey character that everybody said was out of date and could never work. And the fact that he was a symbol of America, it definitely wouldn't fly overseas. And he made it an amazing movie. And that's with the fact that we spent 30 minutes with a skinny version of Chris Evans that they weren't even sure was going to work while they were filming it. You know, it's the technology and stuff to do it. They've overshot everything just in case they needed it to do the special effects to make skinny Steve Rogers. And I know just about everybody who watched that movie, when that moment that the machine comes back up and the doors open, your first thought is, how did they make him so big? Because you're remembering him as this tiny guy. You buy in to the tiny little guy, and then suddenly he's not. See, that was all great filmmaking. It says, I wonder why they decided to make Thor more of a slapstick comedy as the movies progressed, all the way to the point of love and blunder. Good word choice there. Thor went from great to kind of stupid, because I think they had such a problem with Thor 2, and everybody thought that the thing was dead at the time, so they gave it to Taika Waititi to see what he could do, and everybody loved Ragnarok. Now, of course, Marvel rounded out the first phase. Yeah, Hemsworth actually does have great comedic timing. Marvel rounded out the first phase with their biggest risk of all, of course, the Avengers. And to do this, Kevin Feige gave the big plan, the thing that would pull all of it together. He said, let's get this TV guy to direct it. He'd only done one movie beforehand, and it was a movie based on his own show, Joss Whedon. Now, I know that Joss Whedon is really out of favor right now. There's a lot of negative stuff that came out about how he runs his sets and stuff, and nobody's hiring him. But at the time, he was known for writing great women and was really at the peak of his popularity. He had done Firefly, Dollhouse, Angel, and Buffy. All of them got critical praise, even though Dollhouse and Firefly didn't last that long. But I mean, just to show you how much people liked him, when Zack Snyder had to step away from Justice League, that's who they went to, as Joss Whedon. Now, Avengers works. The gamble paid off. And again, it set the bar so high for Marvel that it also let them think, oh, we can get TV directors. We don't necessarily have to get film directors. We can get TV directors and give them the shot at film, which I think that success led them to trying out different people. Some of them were big hits. Some of them weren't. And I think that's the problem, is that they got away from what they were doing. The first thing was looking at people with film experience that may not do big budget superhero movies, but but what they did do, they did well. So, I think each one of those directors had something that they brought. Joe Johnston could do period pieces like The Rocketeer, made him perfect for Captain America. Kenneth Branagh could do big budget stuff, but he could also do Shakespeare and make people believe it. That's why you go to him. Louis Leterrier was great at action. That's what they wanted, was an action movie. So that made sense. Joss Whedon was great handling a lot of people. Angel and Buffy and all those shows were big casts. And he was good at writing women, and they were going to really showcase Black Widow, and they were bringing in Maria Hill. So all of those people made sense. When we get to phase 2, though, then you start getting some interesting mixed results. Also, Whedon's the only one from phase 1 to return. In phase 2, they had their falling out with Edgar Wright. He had been working on Ant-Man since around the time that Iron Man got started. When it came time to do Iron Man 3, with Jon Favreau not coming back to direct, he came back to act. But Ed says, not to change the topic, but if I don't ask, I'll forget. Did you ever find anything about Hemsworth Hulk Hogan movie? From what I understand, it's still being in post-production. So, yeah, but no date or anything on it yet. So to replace Favreau, they thought, okay, let's get somebody who, and Robert Downey Jr. may have made the call on this anyway. Let's get somebody who's worked with Robert, and they got Shane Black. Now, Shane Black is the guy that directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the first movie Robert Downey Jr. did when he came back, and it had Val Kilmer in it, and it was well received. It wasn't a big hit, but it was a good movie. Now, he also wrote a bunch of stuff. He wrote Lethal Weapon movies, and I mean, he had the background for it. But I think a lot of what the problem with Iron Man 3 that gets a lot of negative results or feedback is the bait and switch villain, which I think Marvel has successfully fixed with Shang-Chi. So I think people look at Iron Man 3 a little more fondly now. With Thor 2, they went to a TV director, mainly a TV director, Patty Jenkins, who had also done the movie Monster with Charlize Theron, and Charlize won an award for that. But creative differences they kept butting heads, and eventually she would leave and then end up overdoing Wonder Woman, which first one did great, second one bombed. So the studio decided to stick with the TV director people and went to Alan Taylor, one of the directors from Game of Thrones. And Thor: The Dark World is still considered one of the lesser Marvel movies, though it's been slightly redeemed because of Endgame. But this is, again, where they bumped heads, because Alan Taylor wanted to make something more akin to Game of Thrones, where he came from. He wanted a darker, more gravitas to the movie. Marvel wanted something lighter. And what you ended up was this weird hodgepodge that kept going back and forth, and that really wasted the villain. It felt like some of the humor was forced in there, stuff like that. And why would you, if you wanted a humorous movie, why would you go to the director of Game of Thrones? I don't think there's a lot of humor in Game of Thrones. There's some. Tyrion Lannister had some great lines, but that wasn't humor. That was more witty, Now, where they did have luck in phase 2 was that without Joe Johnston returning for Captain America, they got these two directors, a pair of directors, who were mainly known for the TV series Arrested Development and Community, and they had done the movie You, Me, and Dupree, which we all know that Oscar winner. I say that facetiously. Joe and Anthony Russo. Now, I don't know what Kevin Feige saw in these guys, but damn, was that a good call. They also decided to let this kind of quirky indie film guy named James Gunn play in the cosmic corner of the universe with a bunch of outcast characters for Guardians of the Galaxy. And then they went to the guy who did the movie The Breakup and gave him the Ant-Man franchise. And the Russos and Gunn and Peyton Reed all returned to the MCU multiple times. Gunn did 3 movies. Reed did 3 movies. The Russos technically did 4 because Endgame they did 4 movies. So they hit well with those guys. Now, you can critique on how Reed's ended, stuff like that, but overall, that was successful getting those guys. And then the second phase closed out with Joss Whedon coming back to do Avengers Age of Ultron. And at the end of that, Whedon's like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. And that's a good thing because of what happened later on with him. But phase 3, Marvel clicked on like all cylinders. They were great. The Russos returned for Civil War, which was pretty much Avengers 2.5. They got horror director Scott Derrickson to do Doctor Strange, which was a hit. Gunn did a second Guardians. They got the rights to do worked with Sony, and they got the rights to bring in Spider-Man. And they got the guy who did this little Kevin Bacon movie called Cop Car, John Watts, to helm this third take on Spider-Man. And he was a hit as well. I mean, he did 3 Spider-Man movies that were all considered a hit. Then they went to the What We Do in the Shadows director, Taika Waititi, and picked him to try to save the Thor franchise after Dark World. And they went to Creed and Fruitvale Station director Ryan Coogler and gave him Black Panther. Now, Derrickson, Watts, Waititi, and Coogler all have very different voice styles, but they were all able to fit within the Marvel Universe, and they would all be asked to return. Do you think it's too late to give Ruffalo Hulk his own solo movie? He's the only one of the main Avengers that hasn't had one. I don't think he's ever going to get one, but it's not because I think it's too late for the Hulk, because I think the rights issue with Universal aren't cleared up as people think they are. I don't think they can ever do a standalone Hulk movie without letting Universal put it out. So I think that's why we won't get a standalone Hulk movie. Now, the Russos led Infinity War and Endgame and showed that they were definitely the right choice. Peyton Reed returned for Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then Ant-Man and Quantumania, and where a lot of people have problems with that movie, it still made close to $500,000. And I think, other than the bad special effects, it was a better movie than people give credit for. And then that's when they started having problems. I mean, they went with Captain Marvel, they went to a pair of directors, Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, who had done the movie Mississippi Grind and a bunch of TV series, and gave them Captain Marvel. And again, that one just didn't click with fans. Now, I know a lot of that has to do with the female lead and protest stuff, but most people don't love that movie. It's not loved. It's liked. I'm a fan of Brie Larson. I think she's great as Captain Marvel. It's a kind of a slow movie. Hey, Triple B. But Bowden and Fleck were not asked to come back for the sequel. And Watts did another Spider-Man. So then we get to phase 4, and this is where things start really going wrong. It was massively delayed because of the pandemic. And then the first thing out of the gate was Black Widow, directed by Kate Shortland. And people hated the bait and switch on the villain, or the gender change on the villain, or the Taskmaster. The main villain, nobody seemed to like, but other parts of it they did like. So it's another one that I think was panned when it came out, but then kind of got more likes on rewatches and stuff. But Kate Shortland hasn't been asked back for anything. Destin Daniel Cretton. Now, he had worked with Brie Larson and Michael B. Jordan before, so it kind of makes sense that he would get a chance. But he killed it with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, so much so that they asked him to do the next Avenger film. They've got him producing the Wonder Man series. So he was a hit, but then we've only seen one thing from him. John Watts did a third Spider-Man movie, which was great. Scott Derrickson started butting heads with them because they wanted to do something different with Doctor Strange. And when he bailed, they got smart and went, let's just get Sam Raimi. He's done these superhero things before, and he knows a bit of horror. Now, Taika Waititi, who did so good with Thor Ragnarok, bombed with Thor Love and Blunder, as Ed put it. And I think he's done. I think the only time we'll see him again is if he plays Korg again. But Ryan Coogler, for what he had to deal with, the fact that there was the loss of the franchise lead, that the death of Chadwick Boseman, that's a stumbling block that's really hard to get over. But I think he did really well with Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So we're going to talk a little bit about Phase 5, but let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll finish this up. So stay tuned.
Something is speaking to you. Just at the edge of your perception. Your senses fill with visions of vortices.
360 Comics.
Slowly drawing you to one thundering epiphany.
360 Comics!
360 Comics!
The universe is telling you to shop with 360 Comics. Joe's got amazing stock from high dollar to $5 books, from Silver Age to modern, CGC, variant covers, and more. 360 Comics every Wednesday at 9 Eastern, part of The Experience.
All right, so we're continuing. By the way, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Stick around for What's in the Box and the Geek Chat, and of course, Sketch Up tonight. We got a great lineup today. So we're going to continue with our talk about the directors of Marvel. Now, Phase 5, the 3 films released haven't exactly been promising for the studio's future. Peyton Reed's Quantumania, again, poorly reviewed, panned. Again, I think that's another one that's going to be looked at better in retrospect. Guardians 3 was a hit, and it gets overlooked a lot. But James's last movie for Marvel was an absolute hit, but he's gone now. He's over doing DC Studios. Now, the Captain Marvel sequel, that one I actually enjoyed. It was better than I think people gave it credit for. But, you know, Nia DaCosta, she had done Candyman and a few other things. You don't hear anything about her coming back. You don't even hear about another Captain Marvel movie. So will that be the end of that franchise and she'll just pop up in other things? There's just a lot of uncertainty moving forward. And while they're going with a popular franchise next, Deadpool, they're trying it, but bringing in Wolverine, which is going to get confusing, but it could be great. And they're going with the Free Guy director, Sean Levy. So at least they're going with someone who has big screen experience and dealing with a lot of insanity. I mean, he's already worked with Ryan Reynolds, so he's got that down. But that's the thing, is they're having a hard time getting these directors. I mean, Captain America Brave New World is going with Julius Ona, the guy who did Clover Paradox. And the Clover Paradox is a movie that just appeared one day. Do you remember Super Bowl? They came out and just said, hey, look, we're doing Clover Paradox. Here it is. It's out. Jack Schreier is directing Thunderbolts. That's another big team movie, but he's a TV guy again. Matt Shackman is doing the Fantastic Four after John Watts bailed. Shackman, at least he's a known quantity. In fact, he did WandaVision, but again, he's mainly a TV guy. They don't even know what they're going to call Avengers 5. They don't have a director for it. And, you know, Blade just can't keep a director to save its life. So what happened? How did Marvel go from using experienced directors to finding raw talent to the point now where they seem to have more misses than hits. They're talking about Sean Levy now for Avengers 5. Maybe we'll find out if that's true at San Diego Con or D23. But that's really going to depend on how well Deadpool and Wolverine does. I mean, if pre-ticket sales are huge, they might announce that at San Diego. If it's iffy, then they might wait and see and then announce it at D23. Schreier, Ona, and Shackman, they're all untested commodities in movies. Will they be the next Gunn and Reed and Russo, or are they going to be the next Bowden and Flack? You know, and maybe the reason Marvel's having a hard time getting these directors and having to go more rare ones or more lower level ones is because they interfere too much. Or maybe the problem is that in phase 4 and 5, Kevin Feige was so stretched out that he wasn't able to be involved in as much. His guiding hand was needed for those films. Maybe that's the key. That's the thing that Marvel needs to figure out. Let Kyle direct Blade. There you go. Actually, my suggestion was Adam Marcus, who directed Freddy Goes to Hell. He's a good guy, and he'd probably let me help write it. Now, if the path to success is finding up-and-coming talent and then actively guiding them to the finish line, then that might be what they need to do. Because think about it. What have the Russos done since Endgame? Nothing really big. Their stuff has all been kind of Normally, too much meddling from the higher-ups and the execs kind of bring down a movie, but maybe in Marvel's case, they need Kevin Feige more in control. And that's kind of what Marvel is talking about now, is breaking away from having so much stuff going on and giving him more of a chance focusing on smaller things and the details. Maybe that's the key. Maybe it needs more Feige and not less. So that Marvel's had a weird history with directors. And again, you look at these directors once they leave, the ones that they pluck out of obscurity tend to go back to obscurity. And the ones who have a good track record tend to go back to doing what they had been doing. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I think freeing Kevin Feige up to have more creative control does sound like the right thing to do. All right, we're going to wrap it up there, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to stick around. What's in the box? A Geek Chat and Sketch Up tonight. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.
In a world where you hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel,
That'd be really great. Thanks.